Silence is often mistaken for weakness. In reality, it is one of the most powerful weapons you can use against a manipulator. Most people believe they lose because the other person is more intelligent, more confident, or more convincing. That is rarely the real reason. The truth is far more unsettling. Manipulators are not playing the same game as everyone else. While you are trying to solve a misunderstanding, they are quietly studying your reactions. While you are searching for honesty, they are searching for control. While you are explaining your intentions, they are measuring your fears, your guilt, your patience, and your emotional limits. By the time you realize what is happening, the conversation has already moved in their favor. This is why so many good, honest, and emotionally aware people leave certain conversations feeling confused, exhausted, or even guilty without fully understanding why. They replay every word in their mind, wondering what they could have said differently. But the real mistake was never the words they chose. The real mistake was believing they were speaking with someone whose goal was truth instead of influence. One of the greatest myths about manipulation is that it only happens in obviously toxic relationships or dramatic situations. In reality, manipulation often hides behind ordinary conversations. It can sound like concern. It can look like kindness. It can arrive as a compliment, an apology, or a request for understanding. Sometimes it wears the face of love. Sometimes it appears as loyalty. Other times it disguises itself as disappointment, guilt, or responsibility. Because these tactics rarely look dangerous at first, people lower their guard without realizing it. That is exactly what makes manipulation so effective. It doesn't begin with control. It begins with trust. By the time control becomes obvious, emotional habits have already been created. This is why confronting a manipulator often produces the opposite of what people expect. Instead of admitting the truth, they redirect the conversation, change the subject, question your memory, or make you feel responsible for the very behavior they created. Many people think exposing manipulation is enough to stop it. But experienced manipulators are prepared for confrontation. They know how to survive arguments because arguments give them exactly what they want: your attention, your emotions, and another opportunity to shape the story. Psychologists have spent decades studying how influence works, and one pattern appears again and again. People are easier to control when they react emotionally before they think logically. Fear, anger, guilt, shame, excitement, and anxiety all narrow clear thinking. In those moments, decisions become impulsive, boundaries become weaker, and manipulation becomes much easier. This is why manipulators often create emotional pressure before asking for agreement. They know that a rushed mind rarely makes its strongest decisions. Most people assume manipulation is about clever words. In reality, it is much more about emotional timing. The right pressure at the right moment can completely change how someone responds. That is a fact many people never realize until they look back and recognize the pattern after the damage has already been done. Another lesser-known truth is that manipulators often reveal more through your reactions than through their own words. Every time you become defensive, explain yourself for too long, rush to prove your innocence, or seek their approval, they gain valuable information. They begin to understand what makes you uncomfortable, what makes you afraid, what makes you guilty, and what makes you easy to influence. They are constantly collecting emotional data. The frightening part is that most people willingly provide it without noticing. They think they are clearing up a misunderstanding, but they are actually handing over the exact map that will be used against them later. This is why some conversations leave you feeling emotionally exposed, even when you believed you were simply being honest. The good news is that every manipulative strategy has a weakness. The people who consistently escape manipulation are not necessarily stronger, louder, or more aggressive. They simply understand the rules of the game. They know when silence speaks louder than explanations. They know when patience is more powerful than instant reactions. They know that not every accusation deserves an answer, not every challenge deserves a response, and not every battle deserves their energy. They understand that real confidence is often quiet. It does not rush to defend itself because it does not depend on another person's approval. That kind of emotional discipline is incredibly difficult for manipulators to control because their influence depends on predictable reactions. Once those reactions disappear, much of their power disappears with them. In this video, you are going to discover 7 psychological rules that can completely change the way you deal with manipulative people. These are not tricks designed to humiliate anyone. They are not methods of revenge or emotional games. They are practical principles based on human behavior, emotional intelligence, and psychological awareness. You will learn why revealing less often gives you more power than saying everything on your mind. You will understand why controlling your emotions changes the balance of every difficult conversation. You will see why endless explanations rarely solve manipulation and often make it stronger. You will discover why patterns always matter more than promises, why silence can become one of your greatest strengths, why actions always speak louder than warnings, and why becoming emotionally unpredictable makes it incredibly difficult for anyone to control you. Each rule builds on the one before it, creating a mindset that protects your peace instead of feeding someone else's need for control. The final rule may be the most important of them all because it explains something that very few people ever talk about. It reveals the moment when a manipulator realizes they are no longer dealing with the same person they once controlled. That moment does not happen because of a perfect argument or a dramatic confrontation. It happens because your thinking changes. Once that happens, the entire relationship changes as well. If you miss that final lesson, you will miss the piece that connects everything else together. That is why watching until the very end is so important. Each rule prepares you for the next one, and together they create a powerful way of protecting your mind, your confidence, and your emotional freedom. If understanding people, mastering emotional intelligence, and learning the hidden psychology behind human behavior interests you, then you are in the right place. Welcome to the channel. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our future videos. Now, let's begin with the first rule that quietly takes away a manipulator's greatest advantage. Rule number 1 is simple, but very few people actually follow it. Never reveal your entire strategy. Most honest people believe openness creates trust. They think sharing every thought, every plan, and every feeling proves they have nothing to hide. With healthy people, that can build stronger relationships. But with a manipulator, too much information becomes a weapon. They are always paying attention, even when they appear distracted. They notice what makes you nervous. They remember what hurts you. They quietly collect details about your dreams, your disappointments, your fears, your habits, and even the things you casually mention during ordinary conversations. At first, it feels harmless because they rarely use that information immediately. They wait. They store it. Then, when the right opportunity appears, they bring it back in a way that benefits them. A fear you shared during a vulnerable moment suddenly becomes a reason to make you doubt yourself. A dream you talked about becomes something they criticize when they want to lower your confidence. An insecurity you admitted months ago suddenly appears during an argument. That is why manipulators ask so many personal questions in the beginning. It is not always because they genuinely care. Sometimes they are building a psychological profile. The more they know, the easier it becomes to predict your behavior. This is why quiet confidence is so difficult for them to control. A person who does not constantly explain themselves leaves very little for a manipulator to use. Silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty removes one of their greatest advantages. This does not mean becoming cold or secretive. It means becoming intentional. Share with people who have earned your trust, not with everyone who asks. Learn to pause before revealing every plan or every emotional struggle. Some goals grow stronger when they develop in private. Some victories are safer before they become public. The strongest people are often the ones who let their actions speak before their words. They do not feel the need to announce every move because their confidence does not depend on outside approval. Manipulators become uncomfortable around people they cannot easily read because they lose the ability to prepare their next move. Speak less than you normally would. Observe more than you think is necessary. Pay attention to what people ask, how they react, and what they seem unusually interested in knowing. Sometimes the questions people ask reveal more about their intentions than the answers you give. Once a manipulator realizes they cannot clearly read your plans, they rarely give up. Instead, they shift their attention towards something even more valuable: your emotions. That brings us to the second rule. Control your emotional reactions. This is where many people unknowingly hand over their power. Manipulators understand something that most people never stop to think about. Strong emotions weaken careful thinking. When someone feels angry, guilty, embarrassed, anxious, or afraid, they often react before they reflect. Decisions become rushed. Words become careless. Boundaries become unclear. That is exactly why manipulators create emotional pressure. They interrupt you while you are speaking. They make unfair accusations. They question your memory. They compare you to other people. They bring up old mistakes that have nothing to do with the present conversation. They twist your words until frustration takes over. Once emotions rise, the discussion is no longer about solving the problem. It becomes about controlling your reaction. If they can make you angry enough to shout, they can point to your anger instead of their behavior. If they can make you feel guilty enough, they can push you into agreeing with something you never wanted. If they can make you panic, they can rush you into decisions that benefit them. This is why emotional discipline is one of the greatest forms of strength. Remaining calm does not mean you approve of bad behavior. It means you refuse to let someone else decide how you think or respond. Even a few seconds of silence before answering can completely change the direction of a conversation. That short pause gives your logical mind time to catch up with your emotions. Suddenly, you begin responding instead of reacting. Manipulators often expect instant emotional responses because that is where they have the greatest advantage. When those reactions disappear, they become uncertain. They may repeat themselves, become louder, or change the subject because the strategy they expected is no longer working. Calmness is deeply unsettling to someone who depends on emotional chaos. The calmer you become, the less influence they have over your decisions. Emotional control is not about hiding feelings. It is about choosing when and how to express them. That choice belongs to you, not to the person trying to provoke you. Once emotional reactions stop giving them results, manipulators usually move toward another tactic that appears reasonable on the surface, but quietly pulls people into endless conversations. The third rule is to stop explaining yourself. Many people believe that if they can simply explain clearly enough, patiently enough, or kindly enough, the misunderstanding will disappear. That works with reasonable people who truly want to understand. It rarely works with manipulators because understanding was never their goal. Every extra sentence becomes another opportunity to challenge your words. Every explanation creates another detail they can question. They interrupt with new accusations before you finish answering the old ones. They ignore your main point and focus on a single word that allows the conversation to continue. Before long, you are defending things you never even said. Hours pass, and nothing changes except your exhaustion. This is exactly what they wanted. Endless explanations keep you emotionally invested while allowing them to stay in control of the conversation. Confident people understand that boundaries do not require lengthy speeches. Sometimes a respectful no is complete on its own. Sometimes saying, "That doesn't work for me," is enough. Sometimes choosing not to continue the argument is the strongest response available. Manipulators often mistake kindness for weakness because many kind people struggle to disappoint others. They feel responsible for making everyone understand their decisions. But your responsibility is to communicate clearly, not to force someone else to agree. There is a powerful difference between explaining once and defending yourself forever. One creates clarity. The other creates dependence on another person's approval. Quiet confidence does not chase acceptance. It accepts that not everyone will understand every decision you make. When you stop over-explaining, manipulators lose many of the openings they normally use to keep you trapped. That is often when they reach for one of their oldest and most convincing weapons: promises. Manipulation can feel overwhelming when you first recognize it. It makes you question your judgment, your memory, and sometimes even your own worth. But the moment you understand how manipulation works, everything begins to change. You stop reacting to every accusation. You stop feeling responsible for fixing every conflict. You stop wasting your energy trying to convince people who have already decided to misunderstand you. That is where your real strength begins. The greatest shift is not in the manipulator. It is in you. Once your thinking changes, their tactics lose much of their power. Remember, manipulators rarely lose because someone exposed them or argued with them long enough. They lose because someone quietly stopped playing their game. They lose when their guilt no longer works. They lose when their emotional traps no longer receive the reaction they expect. They lose when you choose peace over proving a point. You don't need louder arguments to protect yourself. You need clearer thinking. You don't need revenge to move forward. You need emotional discipline. Every calm decision weakens manipulation. Every healthy boundary strengthens your freedom. Every moment you choose self-respect over people-pleasing is another step toward a life that no one else can control. The most powerful people are not the ones who win every argument. They are the ones who no longer need to. They understand that silence can be stronger than shouting, patience can be wiser than impulsive reactions, and walking away at the right time is often the greatest victory of all. The strongest move isn't proving a manipulator wrong. It's becoming someone they can no longer control. If this video helped you see manipulation from a new perspective, don't keep this knowledge to yourself. Someone in your life may need to hear these lessons today. Take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our future videos on psychology, emotional intelligence, and personal growth. Also, share this video with your friends and family because the right knowledge at the right time can completely change someone's life. Finally, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these 7 rules do you think is the most powerful? And have you ever successfully dealt with a manipulator by staying calm instead of reacting emotionally? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story could encourage someone else who is fighting the same battle. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, protect your peace, guard your mind, and never give away the power that belongs to you.